rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here we are, we meet again in our sixth lecture. In the previous two lectures we discussed, different genres, starting with poetry genre, and then last time we talked about the genre of folk tales and then fairy tales. Okay. Today we go to a new topic, okay, and a new genre that is called realistic genre. A realistic genre, and which is under this main title اللي هو realism in children's literature. Okay. Realistic genre, when we say realistic, what do we mean by realistic? Here you have what is meant by realistic in literature in general and in children's literature in particular. So when we talk about, when we say realism in literature or realistic genre, we talk about, works that, deal with real life, real people, of the everyday life people, of ordinary people, It talks about, real, events of the real life. Yani no imagination and no, superstitions or no, let's say, guessing or projection of what's going to happen in the future. No. Realistic children, our realistic work here, realistic genre, literary realism focuses on fidelity to everyday life. So it concentrates, it is dedicated to everyday life. Okay, a realistic work depicts word as is, talks about the word as is, not as what it was or what it could be or what will it or what it will be. The authors present ordinary people living their everyday lives. So it talks about ordinary people, not superstitious or imaginative characters. Okay, then that means fantasy, magic, supernatural events are absent from the realistic novel. Okay, you don't find these things in realistic novel. No fantasy, no magic, no supernatural events. Okay, in realistic works. The protagonist, the main characters, the protagonist is ordinary rather than heroic. An ordinary person, not heroic, has not made the main characters or the protagonist or hero of the works of fiction or poetry or fiction in particular in realistic works. They talk about ordinary people, not heroic persons, and the events are commonplace rather than extraordinary. Even talk about the ordinary setting, not something that is imaginative or doesn't exist at all in the real world. All fiction is based on artifice, but writers of realistic works hide their artifice. Okay, the fiction, the concept of realism has evolved over the past century, developed. Earlier realistic novels, okay, here are examples of the early novels that that they were considered to be realistic. So these are examples that should be memorized as examples of realistic novels or realistic works. Earlier realistic novels for children differ from later ones. The latter fall under the category of new realism. Prior to the 1970s, realistic novels such as Anne of Green Gables and The Secret Garden focused on the typical problems of growing up. So these are two examples of realistic novels. Okay, the 1970 from realism is called social realism. So what is called, around the 1970s, under new realism, you have here two examples as Anne of Green Gables and The Secret of Garden. Pre 1970, before 1970, realism is also called social realism. Okay, sometimes stories, because they deal with the social problems of the family. Sometimes the stories are also classified as family novels. Okay, since they typically focus on family issues such as conflict with parents or sibling rivalry. اللي هو the competition or the fight between brothers and sisters. Okay. The protagonists or main characters in realistic genre, in all forms of realistic stories, gain greater self-awareness and maturity by facing challenges and overcoming these challenges. And now, new realism under realistic genre, okay, and that is 1970s. Okay, many post-1970 realistic novels equate realism with the darker, harsher side of life. Realism in these stories is often associated with suffering and unhappiness. Okay, and new realism has introduced subjects that were previously thought unsuitable for children. These books are sometimes called social problem novels because they focus on problems such as divorce, abuse, parental neglect, violence, and gangs. In many of these novels, adults and especially parents let children down. Okay, let them down, disappoint them. Parents, especially parents or adults, disappoint their children. Children must learn to cope without a loving parental figure in many of these stories, without having encounter life, okay, without even their parents or loving people around them. This is here an important title and part of the course to concentrate on اللي هو ايش elements of literary literature. Now these elements are elements of other types of literature, but here with concentration in literature for children. These elements, as I've just said, they are common elements in other types of literature اللي هو for adults, okay, including drama, poetry, and of course fiction in general. These elements starting with characters, okay, as a first element اللي هو characters. Characters is just the person or any person involved in any story or a tale or a folk tale or a fairy tale, okay, or any work that is dedicated for children. In children's literature, character is used to mean a person. A character is a person or personified animal or object. So it could be a person or an animal or an object that is made as a person. Sometimes, especially in children, writers, authors, they make, non-living things to act as living things. Making, animals, act, speak as, people, as human beings. And sometimes you find also, non-living things like, a car is speaking, or, a tree is speaking or talking to, trees talking to each other, or part of the actions you have, non-living things speak, act as a human being. So these are considered to be characters of any piece of any story, written for children, or any piece of literature, I mean. Characters, we have character development, a collection of features that bring the character to life, inner and outer qualities. Revelation, of course, characters develop in any story, okay, and the development could be inner or outer development, or both together. Okay, revelation of characters. How do we know about characters in a story or any work of literature? Of course, through their thoughts, through their conversations, through their actions and behaviors, or through the narration. Okay, the author's narration. Okay, or the comments from the narration, or even comments from other characters about other characters, or the thoughts of other characters. Okay, what are the different types of characters? Okay, we have different kinds. First is the round character, our round characters. So a round character is the fully developed character in a story. Okay, طبعا الراوند characters عادة بيكون ايش among the main characters or the protagonists, the heroes. يعني you don't expect minor characters to be round characters. Round characters are usually I would say are almost always الهيروز او البروتاغونست او ايش central main characters, and the round characters is what اللي هو fully developed. The characters يعني who develops completely, يعني changes totally. Flat characters, no, these characters are less important than the round characters, and they are of course essential to the action, important, but they do not develop. They do not develop. They just start and end to be the same in a story or in a fairy tale. They do not change. Okay, they are flat characters, يعني characters who do not change all through the course of the story. Dynamic characters هو the characters that change in the course of the action. They change from one state to another, from one condition to another. Okay, they grow up from physically and spiritually. Dynamic characters, the changing characters, characters who change all through the course of the action. The static characters, no change in the course of the story at all. Okay, اللي هو the flat characters, stereotype characters or stereotypes and folds, اللي هم minor characters whose traits are in direct contrast to the main characters. يعني their characteristics, their traits, if you compare them to the main characters, they are totally in contrast with, يعني completely different. يعني this means that they do not static, that means they do not change. يعني let's say like these are minor characters. Let's say like a character who takes the role of a servant. So usually, as you see, servants in a story have the same job from the very beginning to the end. So they start as being servants and they end as being servants. They do not change. Or if you talk about within the story, there is a character who acts as a barber or as a driver. So these are minor characters. They are important to the actions, but they do not change. They start and from the very beginning of the story to the end as being the same characters. They do not change. They are static. A few examples of these works, okay, or for this genre, Amazing Grace by Hoffman, or My Great Aunt Arizona, okay, by Gloria Huston. These are examples of of stories that tells you about shows you the different types of characters and how they change, whether they are round, static, dynamic, or flat. Next we have the setting, number 2, اللي هو second element, اللي هو setting. What is setting? Setting, just as in other works of literature, اللي هو time and place of the story, يعني where and when the actions of a story take place. And setting, of course, does not include time, place and time. It includes also اللي هو the let's say the part of the day, seasons, whether it is spring, summer, autumn, winter, and it also includes it includes also اللي هو weather conditions. It includes the weather conditions اللي هو whether it is rainy, wet, snowy, let's say dry, windy, dusty. These are also part of the setting. Setting also part of it is also the اللي هو social status of the character. Whether the character is from a low class, from a low social class, or from a high social class, or is the character a poor person or a rich person. Even the way he or she dresses, the way the character dresses, is also part of the setting, because the way the character dresses is part of the way that you tell about the nature of the character. So this is also related to setting. Anyway, setting is mainly time and place, but there are other things to include to the setting. Characteristics of setting, okay, اللي هو time identified as past, present, or future. Okay, setting is developed through text or illustrations. How do you know about the setting? Of course, through the text. يعني while the text goes on and on, we know about the setting, about the new time, okay, about the new place. Or if there are illustrations that go along with the story, so we know from these illustrations that the actions are taking place here or there. Next, setting provides details which reinforce the plot and characterization. The setting is of course important too. It's not there for nothing. Setting serves an important function, okay, to help to reinforce. It reinforces, setting reinforces the plot and the characterization, presenting the characters, because characters may not act the same, okay, when they are in a certain place at a certain time. Okay, so people, characters in a story, they act differently from one place to another, from one time to another. So the setting affects very much the characterization and the plot, the development of the actions of the story. Types of setting: time and place influence action, character or theme, okay, and setting influences time and place. Setting influences action, character, and theme. Characters behave in a given way because of time and place. Examples: we have A Gleam and Glow, Eve Bunton, Grandfather's Journey, Aaron Say, The Relatives Came, by Cynthia Rayland. Next, element number 3 is the plot. The plot is also one of the major element in let's say in different types of literature. It's a major element in drama and in fiction. Okay, what is plot? Plot is a sequence of events. Okay, the sequence of events showing characters in action. Okay, the way the events arranged from the very beginning up, okay, to the middle, up to the climax, to the turning point or to the peak, then down to the falling actions, to the end, okay, to the end of the actions, to the denouement, the conclusion. Okay, so this is what is meant by the plot, sequence of events showing characters in action. Sequence is chosen by the author as the best way of telling the story. So it's the author who chooses the way to arrange his or her plot, because there are different ways to arrange a plot. Now, what are the elements of the plot itself? 3 elements of plot: narrative order, the way order in which writer chooses to unfold, يعني to tell, to uncover the story to the reader. بعدين chronological, telling the story according to its events, to the time happening from early period of time, then next, okay, يعني going by the time, in order of time. يعني flashbacks اللي هو using, sometimes the story is told with flashbacks, the story goes on and then out of a sudden the writer goes back to the past. He goes back with the action to the past by what is called flashback or flashbacks, by telling us about the past, then comes back to the present, continue. Then if there is a need also, again the writer or the author uses flashbacks to refer to the past. Writers disrupt, yani disconnect the normal time sequence to recount some past event by flashbacking or by giving flashbacks. Conflict as part of the plot, because there is no plot without a conflict. If you do not have a conflict, you can't have a plot. Okay? A plot is also essential. Conflict is essential to the plot. If you don't have a conflict, you can't have a plot, can't have a story. And what is conflict? What is conflict? Conflict is the struggles the protagonist of the story faces. Okay? Conflict is the struggle between two forces. Okay? Between the protagonist and the antagonist, between the hero and the anti-hero. Conflict is the struggle between two forces, two opposing forces, two contradictory forces, between the protagonist, the hero, and the opposite force or forces اللي هو الانتي-hero أو الانtagonist. طبعا الconflict has also kinds. There are different kinds of conflicts. اللي هو يعني الconflict, struggle can be between person against self. يعني sometimes it's psychological. The conflict in a story can be psychological, can be between the person, the protagonist, and himself. He is against himself, something psychological. Character typically faces an internal conflict, a psychological conflict, which pulls him or her toward two courses of action. بعدين a struggle between person against person, which is the most usual type of conflict. Man against man, okay, woman against woman, family against family, children against parents, or against their father, or the husband against wife, or wife against husband. So person to person, person against person, involves a struggle between two or more characters. Then next three, a person against society. You have many stories that talk about a struggle between the protagonist, el hero, against his society, against the traditions, the customs, the norms of his society. He is against, he is not satisfied with what he sees or what he practices in his society. Person against society involves a struggle between a character or characters and their social mores, cultural values, or sometimes the law. Mores اللي هو ايش؟ الهابتس، المانرز. بعدين last type of conflict اللي هو ايش؟ person against nature. There are many stories that talk about man struggling. A man, struggle, يعني a person, whoever it is, a man or a woman, is struggling against the nature, يعني surviving through summer heat, or the heat of the desert, and then or the low temperature in certain places. Okay, there are many stories. Involves a conflict between a character and some force or forces of nature. like heavy rains or floods, okay, typhoons, tsunamis. Okay, these are stories can be done with people striving or struggling against these again, these are as parts of the nature, or as phenomena from nature. Climax, okay, as part of also the plot, اللي هو the peak, اللي هو the turning point, okay, when the actions of a story, the actions come to their most complex or complicated point, we call it the climax, the turning point, from which the story starts to find results or solutions for the problem. Okay, climax اللي هي بسميها العقدة أو الحبكة أو okay, يعني ذروة الأحداث، لما تصل الأحداث إلى ذروتها، إلى قمة تعقيدها. Okay, this is part of the plot, of course. Peak and turning point of conflict. Okay, when actions come to the most complicated point, then after that, the story starts to find, or the author gives solutions to these complicated matters. Denouement اللي هو الكونكلوجن، اللي هو الاند، اللي هو resolution كمان، or trying to gather of the tying together the plot that gives the reader a sense of completeness at an end. Okay, just trying to put actions together and then find solutions and a conclusion to the events, so to get to the end of the story, a satisfying ending to the story, or reasonable ending to the story. Examples we have اللي هو The Ugly Duckling and Harriet and the Promised Land. Next اللي هو the fourth element and the last اللي هو point of view. The point of view is also a major element in other types of literature like drama and fiction. The point of view here, we talk about the angle from which the reader the readers see the action. Okay, أو يعني the point of view is the way the story is narrated. The way the story is narrated. أو اللي is the side of the story the reader sees as revealed by the author through the characters. The point of view is seen through the eyes of and minds of characters as the plot unfolds. The story is told, when we say point of view, يعني how the story is told. إيش يعني how it is told? The story is either told by first person or third person. When we say first person, we talk about a story that is told by someone who is part of the actions. Okay, who is part of the characters, أو the narrator اللي هو the point of view اللي هو narrator is participating, or one who participates in the actions of the story. So he says I. Okay, one day I was sitting in my room, I thought, I said, I, my, our, us. So this is first person اللي هو the first type of point of view, first type of اللي هو narrator, first type of narration. okay, اللي هو ايش الفيرست بيرسون. طبعا الفيرست بيرسون يعني بمعنى انه هو الضمير I، استعمال الضمير I في ايش رواية القصة، اللي هو I, my parents, my mother, I went, I did. okay, and the I point of view هون ايش بنسميها I point of view اللي هو الفيرست بيرسون point of view اللي هو ايش بيكون I أو اللي هو الناريتر I is a participant. okay, is a participant, is يعني participating in the actions of the story. First person, the story told through first person narrator I, the pronoun I, whose actions and feelings influence the story. Of course, the actions and his feelings influence the actions of the story because he's involved, or she's involved, because the narrator is involved in the actions. The character is limited, اللي هو the first person, the character is limited in perspective because he or she cannot tell what another character thinks unless told by other characters. يعني in a way here it is said that the first person is what? Is limited, restricted, okay? Because he doesn't see يعني much. He has to be told about others to unfold or to know about, you know, different actions or to know about other people. Okay? An objective point of view. An objective point of view. The author lets actions speak for themselves. The author describes only the character's actions. The reader is left to infer characters' thoughts and feelings. Point of view في عندنا اللي هو first person أو third person can be objective. إيش يعني objective? Objective if the narrator just says what really happens, just states facts. يعني the narrator doesn't interfere with the actions. يعني the narrator doesn't comment and doesn't, you know, give his opinion, and the narrator here also doesn't go deep into the minds, the brains, the feelings, the hearts, the dreams, the thoughts of the characters. هذا objective لأنه يعني the narrator here the narrator or the author lets actions speak for themselves. So you just, all what we know about, you know, about the story is what we see. The narrator is objective here because he states, he tells facts. Okay, he tells us what is happening only. The narrator doesn't interfere or comment. The opposite of what is subjective point of view. Subjective مش موجود معنا، بلاش معه. We do not need to worry about it. Subjective. Subjective اللي هو opposite the objective. Subjective, you know, the narrator interferes with the actions, comments on the actions, and he knows about the thoughts, the feelings, the dreams of the characters. Okay, this is the and finishing here with the objective point of view, اللي هو the one that tells facts and, you know, who tells reality. Omniscient point of view. طبعا omniscient means the wholly knowing person or narrator. Omniscient point of view اللي هو either the I point of view or the اللي هو first person or third person. When the narrator knows, omniscient يعني if the narrator knows about the feelings, the thoughts, what goes in the minds, in the feelings, in the hearts of the characters, we call it what? Omniscient point of view. Omniscient point of view. يعني that means he knows everything about the character, including internal things. يعني he can, the narrator goes inside the character, so he knows what goes inside the character, and usually it's limited to one or two, and usually the most probably here limited to the protagonist and the antagonist, or one of them, only the major characters, but not every character. Omniscient point of view, story is told in the third person with author about talking about they, he, she. الomniscient point of view اللي هو بسميه third person، نسميه third person point of view اللي هو ايش؟ using he, she, they. So instead of saying, you know, there was, you know, a room in a big house there, you know, in the forest, you know, and there was, you know, a man called, you know, let's say William Jones, he was, he. Then, you know, some people came join him, he and the other guys, he and his parents, he, they, he. هون ايش بنسميه؟ it's the omniscient point of view اللي هو ايش؟ third person point of view. يعني بيستخدم ايش؟ الثيرد بيرسون اللي هو ضمائر الثيرد بيرسون اللي هي he, she و they. Number 2 اللي هو author is not restricted to the knowledge, experience and feelings of one character. Omniscient يعني can be omniscient for more than one character, so he's not just restricted to one character. Feelings, thoughts and even motives of any or all characters can be revealed to give the reader helpful information. That's part of the omniscient point of view. Limited omniscient point of view, limited omniscient يعني the narrator is omniscient only for one or two characters. And that means he can tell about what goes inside usually the main characters or the main character or the protagonist, الهيرو أو الهيروين. طبعا هذا limited omniscient هو combination of the first and omniscient. Okay, combination of the first and اللي هو الثird اللي هو omniscient. Story is told through the eyes of a single character, usually the protagonist, but is not told in first person. في عندنا الأمثلة عليها examples were the stories you can read to your dog. By who? By Sarah Miller. Last element, element number 5, is also a very common element in all types of literature. اللي هي the theme. And what is the theme? Okay, what can it be? What does it mean? Theme is the moral lesson that you learn after reading a story or a piece of literature. Okay, the moral lesson you learn after you read a story or a piece of literature. Okay, it's the central idea. It's the moral lesson that, you know, the author, okay, the writer wants to convey to the readers. Okay, it's what also the theme is, the message that the writer wants to deliver to the readers, to convey to the readers. So and this is always the last question you ask about, you know, after discussing any piece of literature. Before you start, when you want to end up a discussion on or about, you know, a piece of literature, at the end you end up with what? The theme. What is the theme? What is the theme? So the theme is just the moral lesson that you learn, the message the writer wants to convey or to deliver to the readers. It's the central meaning of the story. طبعا what's the nature of the themes, or what's the nature or characteristic of themes? Of course, themes often deal with society, human nature, human condition, social issues, and good versus evil. They are all of these general things, can be either of these general issues. Authors reveal theme explicitly as well as implicitly. Themes are either are revealed or are told very clearly, explicitly, or implicitly, not directly, and so readers have to infer, have to think about this, and, you know, create their own relevant themes. Stories usually have a cluster of themes which are often related. طبعا a story may have more than one theme. A story may have 2, 3, 4 themes. Okay, there could be themes also in a piece of literature. There could be 2 types of themes, اللي هو primary or main theme, and then a secondary theme. الثيم اللي هو primary اللي هو المين اللي هي بتكون central theme، والsecondary بتكون themes within which seem less important أو of lesser importance. في عنا this next اللي هو about maybe 3 2 4 6 8 10 okay 13 16 about 17 or 18 different examples of themes that you may come up with after reading, you know, a piece of literature. And themes are inferred, remember, they are not stated literally. Okay? الthemes في أي قصة تستنتج. Okay? ما تكون موجودة نص حرفي في القصة. Okay? It is inferred. It is inferred, and it could be when you come to يعني give a theme to any story, you may give a famous saying, a proverb, a quotation from an important source. مثلا عندنا themes مثلا ممكن اللي هي زي هذه a plot relates to a single story, whereas the theme a theme is applicable to hundreds of stories. احنا عندنا plot is a plot for a story. It has to have a plot, and there is a plot for each story. Okay, like when it comes to themes, we can have themes, many different themes for one story, and these themes can also be themes of other stories, can be used again and again for other stories. مثلا a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. يعني زي ما بنقول بالعربي عصفور باليد خير من 10 على الشجر. This could be a theme of a story, then and so on. These are all examples you can read by yourselves. A friend in need is a friend indeed. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Beauty is only skin deep. Better late than never. Okay. Don't judge a book by its cover. Okay. He who laughs last laughs longest. necessity أو out of sight, out of mind, بعيد عن العين, بعيد عن القلب. هذه كلها, these are all themes that can be relevant. Okay, so that's, you read please the rest of it, and that's all for today, and see you soon in a new lecture. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.